Hey, my name's Sue Hirsch. You've probably seen some of my blog posts on Medium. Um, and I actually wrote this blog post for Medium before I got the news today from a friend that there has been absolutely no justice for the Candice Reed incident. If you don't know what that is, that's the teacher that made herself look really stupid, um, and showed her true asshole colors, excuse my language, um, when she started mocking what she thought of as Native American behavior, Native American lifestyle, and she actually proved to the rest of the world at large that she knows absolutely nothing, zero. I know more than she does about Native Americans and Native American lifestyles, and I'm pretty ignorant myself, believe it or not, but I'm working on it. So I got this thing today that reminded me about the blog post that I've already written, which is called the winner of the Who Wants to Look Like an Idiot game show is. When I wrote that blog, I had not yet gotten this. Now I've got this, and it tells us how there have been no repercussions. There's been no apology from this teacher, Candice Reed, no statement of concern from Candice Reed, no statement from the school board, and all they will say is it's going to take a year to actually get rid of her. The only thing that's happening to Candice Reed that one might consider bad, but it isn't, is that she's not teaching there anymore. And that's not a bad thing for her. She's on paid leave, so she's getting a year-long vacation until they can kick her out of the school. So that's not real justice, and this is why I wrote this in the first place, because I really had a hunch that there would be no real justice for Candice Reed. So I'm going to read it to you because a friend of mine said he'd put it up on his site if I got it read online somewhere, and recorded myself reading it. Um, let's see. So here we go. The winner of the Who Wants to Look Like an Idiot game show is... The teacher's name was Candice Reed of John W. North High School in California. Countless viewers have vowed to contact the high school about the footage. I hope you will too, by the way. The school has yet to publicly comment on the incident. The Daily Dot reached out to the school for comment. Paul Gowder asked an astute question on this Facebook page. He asks, he says, I'm sure most of you saw the video of the math teacher yesterday. I couldn't open social media without seeing it over and over. She has been placed on leave pending an investigation. Now I'm curious to hear from you. What should the punishment be for this type of behavior? And I replied in this blog post, I think that the real question is not how do we punish people who make themselves look like monumental idiots like Candice Reed, but rather how do we rehabilitate all of America with a focus on the educational system, because she is proof that our educational system failed. It absolutely failed in this case to teach her generation anything about uh, acceptance, tolerance, sensitivity, inclusiveness, and I could go on, but I'm instead going to go on with my blog post. So instead of punishing bigots, which has never worked before, it only made them hide their bigotry until they got licensed to dust it off and display it again in 2016. I'm not mentioning names. So what would help this behind the times teacher to understand that her actions were tone deaf, politically incorrect, and even threatening to some students? It would be easy to fire her and see to it that she's never again allowed to work in a teaching or childcare position, but would it be enough? That gives her an out. She could easily blame others for her firing and say that she had a lot of snowflakes for students and parents of students. Are jail and a fine enough? What would she learn by that? She would learn to hide her bigotry a bit better in future and to be more subtle when she mocks people for who they are. How about a formal apology from her to the student body and their parents, and another formal apology from the school, which I just told you hasn't happened yet? Nice, but historically less than effective as a preventative measure where similar infractions are concerned, because it'll still happen. How about a few years of immersion in community service on a reservation? She'd be teaching a completely Native American curriculum under close supervision on a reservation. She could be required to report to a Native American judge and jury or a panel of them for probationary hearings, just like we do when we've broken the law and we're out on bail. She'd have her freedom as long as she exercised it living in the same conditions for which she mocked her Native American students. Living conditions on the reservations have been cited as comparable to third world. There are 90,000 homeless or unhoused Indian families, and the 30% of Indian housing is overcrowded, and less than 50% of it is connected to a public sewer. While most Americans take running water, telephones, and electricity for granted, many reservation families live without these amenities. I took that from somewhere on the web. I always check my information like that. I can't remember where I got it, but you can look that up easily. Maybe if Miss Reed had to live as the Native Americans live on a reservation for a few years, she'd begin to understand why they pray for rain with dances and for good harvests of fish, if they're lucky enough to be near a coast. And maybe if she were removed from her own state and family so that she had to rely on Native Americans for any social support, food, and supplies, she would have an inkling of what it was like for the Native Americans to be removed from their own territories and left on their own to live with Native Americans from other faraway territories. They're not all the same, folks. Let me interrupt myself here and remind everyone that each tribe that was spread out across the entire United States was different. Each tribe had its own language, and actually within each tribe, since they were separated sometimes by states and mountains, there were dialects and other various languages as well. So not all Miwoks spoke the same dialect, and not all Pomos spoke the same dialect. That's where I am right now. I'm on Miwok land and Pomo land. And I thank you, Native Americans, for allowing us to live here. So come to think of it, let's force march Candice Reed along a trail of tears, just like we did to some Native Americans, actually most of them, to a reservation until she gets to one of those reservations. There were actually several trails of tears. And many Native Americans died on a trail of tears as they were force marched along with very little rest and very little food and water. Let's do that to her in the same way we did that to Native Americans, so she gets an understanding of what we've done, what we need to redress and remedy. Each of the 5 tribes who were removed by U.S. military forces sustained heavy loss of life. For the Cherokees, it is said that no elder over 60 and no child under 6 survived. So harsh were the conditions and the brutality of the forced death marches. I took that statement from somewhere too online. Okay, maybe a forced march would be a bit harsh, but the Native Americans walked it, and so can she. And there's no reason that she should be turned And there's no reason it should be turned into a nice hike with a picnic waiting for her at the end. She can live on a little water and gorp until she gets to the chosen reservation and picks and cooks her own food, and she can pay for the food. She can pay for the food she gleans and for the use of some kind of Native American kitchen, since those are few and far between, and I imagine that they're rather constantly in use. And the Native Americans probably don't really care to share with her, considering who she proved herself to be. Sadly, no one at this school or at a higher level has asked the same very relevant and clear sighted question that Paul Gowdry asked. Thank you, Paul Gowdry, for asking. The simple fact that no one is asking makes it painfully obvious that what is really needed is a leveling of the playing field. Non-Native American students are so spoiled and unthinking that they're taking up TikTok challenges to slap their teachers. How stupid is that? Native American families are lucky to have a dishwasher and or a stove, much less access to the internet to see TikTok challenges. Non-Native American teachers gripe about the low pay of their work. A lot of Native Americans don't have work or homes. See the difference? So how do we level the playing field? If politicians' kids and rich people's kids had to live on campus on reservations, then there would surely be housing upgrades there at warp speed. I'll bet anyone dollars to donuts that if the children of politicians and a lot of rich Americans had to put their kids into schools on Native American reservations, then those schools would also get a lot of upgrades, also at warp speed. And if Miss Reed were to be living on a reservation where she had a good view of all this coming to pass, maybe she would become edified enough to have earned her teaching degree, because right now she represents America's failed educational system. Yes, we have absolutely failed every single one of our students here in America. We failed to make children feel safe in the classroom so that they can get their work done. We failed to keep children properly fed so that they can get their work done. We failed to teach what is relevant to every culture in favor of what is relevant to white privileged culture. We failed to teach adulting and skills that will be needed by our children if they are to survive the end of the American empire as we know it, which is coming. Instead, we've turned back the clock to a time well before America was great, and just for clarification, I would argue that we were never great. We were supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, and I don't see it, folks. Black children are still funneled at breakneck speed through the school-to-prison pipeline. Black adults are still disproportionately jailed for minor infractions of the law or for no infraction at all, and physically abused on the way to jail to the point of death or of needing emergency care. So really, this one teacher mocking an entire American culture is merely a symptom or a signifier of an infectious disease. Fortunately, diseases can be cured. We've had some success with other such cancers. Sometimes it requires a biopsy. Sometimes it requires a removal of that which women think enhances their beauty and allure. Women will understand that one. This time, I think the cancer, aka Miss Reed, could be most effectively removed to a Native American reservation until she's learned civil behavior and the value of plural nationalism to America, as well as some shame and humility. Shame on you, Miss Reed. That's the start on your shame. You should absolutely be ashamed of your behavior in that classroom. And that is all I really wanted to say. And I hope everybody understands the deeper meanings of what I was saying and how terribly messed up we are right now as a nation. We are not standing together, so we're going to fall apart, and it's going to happen soon. Good luck to you for next generation of years until we see this all fall apart. I hope you all can get by and find what you need to survive, and start accepting differences, start accepting and tolerating and even celebrating the other and their culture, um, and their beliefs, because uh, we really need to do that in order to survive. If you don't do that, you're not going to have a lot of friends to trade with when goods run out in the stores, and it's coming. Um, I hate to sound like uh, a doomsayer, but I see it coming. It's on the horizon. America is going to become divided up into smaller nation states, and we're going to have to learn to rely on each other a lot more than we do now. And in order to be able to rely on each other, we need to start treating each other with respect. Because if your neighbor is someone very different from you, but they have eggs and you need eggs, then you need to treat them with respect in order to get their eggs and trade for something you've got. Okay, so that's my 2 cents for today, and I will let you all go and hope you have a nice day. Talk to you later. Bye bye.